The softest voice in the city just woke up the most dangerous man alive. At 3 a.m., trembling in bunny slippers and an oversized sweater, Elena Hart did the unthinkable. She knocked on the door of Adrian Voss, a man whose name alone made grown men go silent. Her hands shook. Her voice cracked. But when he offered her money to disappear, she quietly dropped it at his feet and walked away. That single act of courage lit a fuse neither of them saw coming, one that would turn her invisible life into a battlefield, and his empire into something he'd risk everything to protect. Stay with me until the very end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches. Now let's begin. The apartment building on 5th and Brennan was the kind of place people moved to when they'd given up on being noticed. Cracked tiles in the lobby, flickering hallway lights. The elevator hadn't worked in 3 years. Elena Hart had lived there for 18 months, and in all that time she'd perfected the art of being invisible. She worked at the Hartwell Museum as a junior art restorer, delicate work that required steady hands and absolute silence. Her colleagues barely knew her name. She ate lunch alone, kept her head down, and spoke only when absolutely necessary. Her apartment was small, neat, and filled with books she'd read 100 times. She had no social media, no close friends, no one who'd notice if she disappeared. That was exactly how she wanted it. Until Adrian Voss moved in upstairs. The first night, the music started at midnight, a deep throbbing bass that rattled the light fixtures and made her teacups tremble on their shelves. Elena lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for it to stop. It didn't. At 2 a.m., she pressed a pillow over her head. At 3, she was still awake, her heart pounding with exhaustion and something that felt dangerously close to anger. The second night was worse. Heavy footsteps, voices, laughter that sounded wrong, too sharp, too controlled. The bass started again at 1 a.m. and didn't stop until dawn. By the third night, Elena was unraveling. She sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea that had gone cold an hour ago. Her eyes burned. Her whole body ached with the kind of bone-deep tiredness that made everything feel surreal. The bass pounded through the ceiling like a second heartbeat, and something inside her, something she'd spent years keeping small and quiet, finally snapped. Before she could talk herself out of it, Elena stood up. Her reflection in the darkened window startled her. Oversized gray sweater hanging off one shoulder, pajama pants with tiny moons on them, bunny slippers that had seen better days. Her dark hair was tangled, her face pale, and her eyes had the wild, desperate look of someone who hadn't slept in 72 hours. She looked ridiculous. She didn't care. Elena grabbed her keys, not because she needed them, but because holding something solid made her feel slightly less like she was about to float apart, and stepped into the hallway. The building was different at 3 a.m. The fluorescent lights buzzed with a sound that seemed louder in the silence. Someone's TV murmured behind a closed door. The air smelled like old carpet and someone's leftover Chinese food. Elena's slippers made soft shuffling sounds against the floor as she approached the stairwell. Her hand was shaking when she gripped the railing. "You don't have to do this," a voice in her head whispered. "Go back to bed. Put in earplugs. This isn't worth it." But her feet kept moving, one step, then another. The music grew louder as she climbed. By the time she reached the 4th floor, she could feel it vibrating through the soles of her slippers. The hallway was identical to hers, same worn carpet, same flickering lights. But somehow it felt different, colder. The music was coming from apartment 4C, directly above hers. As Elena approached, she noticed details that made her stomach tighten. The door was reinforced. She could see the heavy-duty hinges, the commercial-grade lock. There was a camera mounted in the corner of the hallway, its red light blinking steadily, and standing near the elevator, pretending to look at his phone, was a man in a dark suit who was clearly standing guard. Elena's courage faltered. "Turn around. This is a mistake." But the music pounded on, and she was so tired, and the anger that had carried her this far hadn't quite burned out yet. Before she could lose her nerve completely, Elena raised her hand and knocked. The music cut off immediately. The silence was so sudden and complete that Elena's ears rang. She heard movement inside the apartment, footsteps, a low voice saying something she couldn't make out. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to run. The door opened. The man standing in the doorway was not what Elena had expected, though she couldn't have said what she'd expected. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair pushed back from a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones. Eyes so dark they were almost black, currently fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to step back. He wore dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms marked with scars she didn't want to think about. There was a stillness to him that reminded Elena of the old paintings she restored, the ones of predators caught mid-hunt, every muscle coiled and ready. This was not a man who got noise complaints. This was a man who made people disappear. Yes? His voice was low, controlled, with an edge that suggested he was not accustomed to being interrupted. Elena's mouth went dry. The speech she'd prepared, polite, reasonable, apologetic, evaporated from her mind. She stood there in her bunny slippers and ratty sweater, staring up at him, and for a long moment couldn't remember how to form words. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again. I live downstairs, in 3C. The music it's very loud. Is it? It wasn't a question. Yes, I have to work in the morning, and I haven't slept in 3 days, and She trailed off, suddenly aware of how she must look to him, how utterly ridiculous this was. I'm sorry. I just need it to stop. Please. Something shifted in his expression, not softening, exactly, but a flicker of what might have been amusement. He leaned against the doorframe, studying her with those unsettling dark eyes. You came up here at 3 a.m. to ask me to turn down my music. Yes. In bunny slippers. Elena felt heat creep up her neck. They're comfortable. They're ridiculous. So is playing music this loud at 3 a.m.? She shot back and immediately regretted it when his eyebrows rose slightly. Behind him, Elena could see into the apartment. It was nothing like hers. All clean lines and expensive furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A man in a dark suit stood near the kitchen, watching their interaction with obvious interest. Another sat on the leather sofa, a laptop open in front of him. This was not a normal neighbor. The man in the doorway seemed to come to some decision. He straightened up, and Elena had to resist the urge to step back. How much? He asked. Elena blinked. What? How much to make this problem go away? He pulled out his wallet, black leather, expensive, and extracted several bills without looking at them. 500? 1,000? Name your price. He held out the money. Elena stared at it. The bills were crisp hundreds, more money than she made in a week. She could take it, go back downstairs, buy earplugs, pretend this conversation never happened. Instead, she felt that spark of anger flare bright again. I don't want your money, she said quietly. I want to sleep. Everyone wants money. I want sleep. He studied her for a long moment, then took a step forward, closing the distance between them. Elena's heart rate spiked, but she held her ground even as every nerve in her body screamed at her to run. Take the money, he said, his voice dropping lower. Go back downstairs. Forget you were ever up here. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order, delivered by someone who expected absolute obedience. Elena looked down at the money still extended toward her. Then, moving slowly and deliberately, she reached out and let it drop from her fingers. The bills fluttered to the ground between them. Thank you for the offer, she said, her voice shaking but steady. But I don't want it. I just want quiet. That's all. The silence that followed was profound. The man stared at her with an expression she couldn't read. Behind him, the suited man by the kitchen had gone very still. Even the air seemed to have changed, charged with something dangerous. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost wondering. What's your name? Elena. Elena Hart. Elena Hart. He said it slowly, like he was tasting each syllable. You just made a very interesting choice. I made the only choice I could live with. Most people don't have that luxury. Then I'm sorry for them. Another long silence. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been the ghost of a smile. Adrian Voss, he said, the music will stop. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Before Elena could ask what that meant, he stepped back and closed the door. She stood in the hallway for a moment, staring at the money still scattered on the floor, her heart pounding so hard she felt dizzy. Then she turned and walked back to the stairwell on legs that felt like water. Mom. Elena didn't sleep that night either, but it wasn't because of the music. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over. The way Adrian Voss had looked at her, the casual way he'd offered her money, the strange expression on his face when she'd dropped it. You just made a very interesting choice. What did that mean? Elena rolled onto her side, hugging a pillow to her chest. She should feel relieved. The music had stopped. The apartment above her was completely silent now. She'd gotten what she wanted. So why did she feel like she'd just stepped onto a path she couldn't see the end of? The next morning, Elena dragged herself to work on 3 hours of restless sleep. The museum was quiet, as always, and she threw herself into her current project, a 17th century oil painting that had suffered water damage along one edge. The work was meticulous, requiring absolute focus, and for a few hours she managed to forget about bunny slippers and dangerous men with dark eyes. Elena? She jumped, nearly dropping her fine-tip brush. Doctor. Patricia Chen, the head curator, stood in the doorway of the restoration lab with an apologetic smile. Sorry, didn't mean to startle you. There's a delivery for you at the front desk. A delivery? Elena frowned. She hadn't ordered anything. Apparently, they were very insistent it go directly to you. Elena set down her brush and followed Dr. Chen to the lobby, her confusion growing with each step. The museum receptionist, Marcus, was standing next to a massive floral arrangement, easily 3 feet tall, filled with white roses, lilies, and orchids that must have cost a small fortune. These just came for you, Marcus said, eyebrows raised in obvious curiosity. Someone's got a secret admirer. Elena felt her stomach drop. The card was tucked among the flowers, her name written in elegant script on the envelope. With shaking fingers, she opened it. An apology for the inconvenience. Avi Elena? Dr. Chen was watching her with concern. Are you all right? You've gone very pale. I'm fine. Elena's voice sounded strange to her own ears. Just surprised. Well, they're absolutely gorgeous. Who are they from? Just a neighbor, Elena managed, apologizing for being loud. Some neighbor. Marcus whistled low. These had to cost at least $500. Elena stared at the flowers, her heart sinking. This wasn't an apology. This was a statement, a reminder, a very expensive way of saying, I know where you work. The flowers were just the beginning. Over the next 3 days, Elena became hyper-aware of being watched. Nothing she could point to directly, just a feeling that crawled up her spine whenever she left her apartment. A dark car that seemed to be parked on her street every morning. A man in a coffee shop who looked away too quickly when she glanced his direction. She told herself she was being paranoid, told herself that Adrian Voss had better things to do than keep tabs on a junior art restorer who'd asked him to turn down his music. Then she walked out to her car on Thursday morning and stopped dead. Every window had been smashed, the tires were slashed, and spray painted across the hood in dripping red letters was a single word: soon. Elena stood on the sidewalk, her bag slipping from her shoulder, staring at the destruction. Around her, other residents were emerging from the building, their voices rising in shock and concern. Someone called the police. Someone else asked if she was okay. She couldn't answer, couldn't move, could barely breathe. Ma'am? Ma'am, are you all right? A police officer was standing in front of her, his young face creased with worry. Elena blinked, trying to focus. I don't understand. Who would do this? Do you have any enemies? Anyone who might want to scare you? Enemies. The word was almost funny. Elena barely existed in most people's lives. Who would go to this much trouble to frighten someone as insignificant as her? The answer whispered itself before she could stop it. Someone who knows you're connected to Adrian Voss. No, she heard herself say. No enemies. The officer didn't look convinced, but he nodded and went to join his partner photographing the damage. Elena stood there, hugging herself against the morning chill, feeling like the ground had just shifted beneath her feet. Miss Hart. The voice came from behind her, deep and calm and terrifyingly familiar. Elena spun around to find Adrian Voss standing at the edge of the growing crowd, looking completely out of place in his expensive dark suit and perfectly polished shoes. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "I think we need to talk." He glanced at the ruined car, his expression unreadable. "Somewhere private. I'm not going anywhere with you." This wasn't random, Elena. The way he said her name, like he'd been saying it for years instead of days, sent a chill through her. "What are you talking about?" "Your car. The message." His dark eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw something that might have been concern. "This is a warning, and it's meant for me." Elena shook her head, backing away. "That's insane. I don't have anything to do with you. I just asked you to turn down your music, and in doing so you made yourself visible." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "My world doesn't work like yours, Elena. In my world, the people around me are either protected or they're targets. Right now, you're the latter." "Then leave me alone." Her voice cracked. "Just leave me alone and this will stop." "It won't." He said it with absolute certainty. "They've already seen you, marked you, and walking away now would be the most dangerous thing I could do." "Who's they?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "People who want to hurt me any way they can. And you—" He broke off, something shifting in his expression. "You made an impression. Standing at my door in those ridiculous slippers, refusing my money like it meant nothing. They saw that, and now they want to know who you are and why you matter to me." "But I don't matter to you." Elena was trembling now, from cold or fear or both. "I'm nobody. I'm nothing." "You're not nothing." He said it quietly, with a conviction that made her breath catch. "And that's the problem." Before Elena could respond, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down, revealing the suited man she'd seen in Adrian's apartment. "Sir," he said urgently, "we need to move." Adrian didn't take his eyes off Elena. "You have two choices. Come with me now. Let me protect you until this is handled. Or stay here, stay visible, and hope they lose interest before they do something worse than destroy your car." "Those aren't real choices." "No," he agreed. "They're not. But they're the only ones you have." Elena looked at her ruined car, at the police taking statements, at the growing crowd of neighbors, all of them watching with morbid curiosity. She thought about her quiet, invisible life, the one she'd worked so hard to build, where no one noticed her, and she could disappear into her work, and her books, and pretend the world couldn't touch her. That life was already gone. She didn't know when it had ended, maybe the moment she'd knocked on Adrian's door, maybe the moment she'd dropped that money at his feet. But standing here on the sidewalk with her breath fogging in the November air, Elena understood that going back was no longer an option. "If I go with you," she said slowly, "this doesn't mean I'm yours to control." Something flickered across Adrian's face, surprise maybe, or approval. "Understood. And when this is over, you can go back to your life. I give you my word." Elena didn't know if she believed him, didn't know if she even believed in promises anymore. But she looked at the word "soon" spray-painted across her car hood and made her choice. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Adrian's hand settled at the small of her back, not pushing, just guiding, as he led her toward the SUV. The touch was warm through her thin jacket, possessive in a way that should have frightened her more than it did. "One more thing," he said as they reached the vehicle. "From now on, you don't go anywhere alone. You don't make decisions without consulting me first. And you don't, under any circumstances, try to handle this yourself." Elena stopped walking. "I thought you said I wasn't yours to control." "You're not. But if you want to survive what's coming, you'll follow my rules." She should have argued, should have demanded her independence, her autonomy, all the things she'd spent years carefully protecting. Instead, she heard herself ask, "What is coming?" Adrian opened the SUV door, his expression grim. "A war I've been trying to avoid for 5 years. And you, Elena Hart, just became the spark that lights the fuse." The penthouse apartment was nothing like the one on the 4th floor. 20 stories above the city, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view that stretched from downtown to the river. The furniture was modern and expensive, all clean lines and dark leather. Abstract art hung on the walls. Originals, Elena noted with the practiced eye of a restorer, worth more than she'd make in a lifetime. Your room is through there, Adrian said, gesturing to a hallway. Thomas will bring up your things from your apartment. Elena turned to stare at him. You can't just move me out of my apartment without my permission. I can, and I did. The lease is being handled. Your landlord has already been compensated. He shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over a chair. Your neighbors were told you're visiting family. The museum received notice that you're taking a leave of absence for personal reasons. You had no right. I had every right. Adrian's voice hardened. The moment you knocked on my door, you entered my world. And in my world, Elena, I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. No, he agreed. But you're under my protection, which amounts to the same thing. For now. Elena's hands balled into fists at her sides. She wanted to scream, to rage, to throw something at his calm, controlled face. Instead, she took a deep breath and asked, Why? Why what? Why does any of this matter to you? I'm nobody. You said so yourself. I'm just someone who had the audacity to complain about loud music. Why not let them have me? Why go to all this trouble for someone who means nothing? Adrian was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those dark, unreadable eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. Because when I offered you money, enough money to solve whatever problems you might have had, you dropped it at my feet like it was worthless. Because you stood at my door in bunny slippers and refused to back down even though you were terrified. Because in 5 years of running this city, I have never met anyone who looked at me the way you did. And how did I look at you? Like I was just a man who needed to turn down his music. He smiled, but there was something dangerous in it. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Elena swallowed hard. I didn't know who you were. I know. That's what made it interesting. And now? Now you're a problem that needs solving. A complication in a game that was already too complicated. Adrian moved to the windows, hands in his pockets, silhouetted against the city lights. My associates think I should eliminate the risk. Send you somewhere far away where you can't be used against me. Fear spiked through Elena's chest. And what do you think? I think... He turned to face her, and in the dim light his features seemed softer, younger, almost vulnerable. I think I want to know what you see when you look at me now. It was the last question Elena had expected. She stood there in her wrinkled work clothes, exhausted and frightened and so far out of her depth she couldn't see the surface anymore, and tried to answer honestly. I see someone dangerous, she said slowly. Someone who controls things. Someone who's probably done terrible things. She paused. But I also see someone who kept his word. The music stopped. And you're protecting me even though it complicates your life. So I don't know what that makes you. Smart woman. Confused woman. That too. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. I have to go. Thomas will be outside your door. Don't leave this apartment. Don't call anyone. Don't do anything. I understand. He studied her for a moment longer, then nodded and headed for the door. He was halfway there when Elena's voice stopped him. Adrian? He turned. Who wants to hurt you badly enough to destroy a stranger's car? His smile was cold. In my line of work, Elena, that's a very long list. But the man who ordered this particular hit, his name is Marcus Volkov, and he's been trying to kill me for 5 years. The first night in the penthouse, Elena didn't sleep at all. She lay in the massive bed, silk sheets, down comforter, more pillows than one person could possibly need, and stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Everything she'd built, every carefully constructed wall that kept her safe and separate from the world, had crumbled in less than a week. And it had started with bunny slippers and loud music. Around 3 a.m., she gave up on sleep and wandered into the main living area. The city spread out below, a constellation of lights that seemed to pulse with life she'd always kept at arm's length. Elena pressed her forehead against the cool glass and tried to remember what her life had been like a week ago. Quiet, simple, safe, lonely. The word whispered itself before she could stop it. She'd been lonely for so long she'd forgotten what anything else felt like, forgotten what it meant to matter to someone, to be seen, to exist as more than a shadow moving through carefully controlled spaces. And now she existed too much, was seen too clearly, mattered in ways that could get her killed. Can't sleep? Elena spun around to find Adrian standing in the hallway, barefoot and shirtless, his hair disheveled from sleep, or what passed for sleep in his world. I didn't mean to wake you, she said. You didn't. I don't sleep much. He moved to the kitchen, pulling out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. Drink? I don't usually. Neither do I, but tonight seems like a good night to make an exception. He poured 2 fingers into each glass and handed her one. Elena took it, their fingers brushing for a moment. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through her. To terrible decisions, Adrian said, raising his glass. Despite everything, Elena felt her lips twitch. Is that what I am? The worst. He clinked his glass against hers. But possibly the most interesting. They drank in silence for a moment. The whiskey burned going down, and Elena coughed. Adrian's expression softened with something that might have been amusement. Not a drinker, then? Not really. I usually stick to chamomile tea. Of course you do. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're exactly the kind of person who drinks chamomile tea at 3 a.m. while wearing bunny slippers and somehow manages to knock on the door of the most dangerous man in the city. He set down his glass. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Maybe both. Definitely both. Elena looked down at her whiskey, swirling it gently. Can I ask you something? You can ask. I may not answer. What you do, the things that make you dangerous, is it worth it? Adrian was quiet for so long Elena thought he wasn't going to respond. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful. That's a complicated question. I have time. Do you? He moved closer to the windows, his profile stark against the city lights. Most people don't ask me questions like that. They either fear me too much or they don't care enough to wonder. Which category do I fall into? Neither. He paused, seeming to search for words. You're a complication I didn't plan for. Sorry about that. Don't be. I'm starting to think complications might be exactly what I needed. Elena joined him at the window, maintaining a careful distance. Below them, the city pulsed with late-night energy, cars moving like blood through veins, lights flickering on and off as people lived their invisible lives. To answer your question, Adrian said quietly, what I do isn't about worth. It's about survival, control, making sure I'm never powerless again. His jaw tightened. I built this empire from nothing, crawled my way out of places you can't imagine. And every day I wake up knowing that someone out there wants to tear it all down. That sounds exhausting. It is. Then why not stop? He turned to look at her, and in the dim light his eyes were softer than she'd seen them. Because the moment I stop, the moment I show weakness, people die. People who depend on me. People who have nowhere else to go. Like me now. Like you now. Elena took another sip of whiskey, feeling it burn away some of the fear that had been sitting in her chest since she'd seen her destroyed car. I don't want to be a weakness for you. Too late. Adrian's smile was wry. You became a weakness the moment you dropped that money at my feet. I didn't know. I know. That's what makes it worse. He reached out, and for a moment Elena thought he was going to touch her face. Instead, he took her whiskey glass and set it aside. You should try to sleep. Tomorrow is going to be difficult. Why? What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow I introduce you to the people who keep me alive, and they decide whether you're worth protecting or whether you're a liability that needs to be eliminated. Elena's breath caught. They wouldn't. They would. And if they vote against you, I'll have to make a choice I'd rather not make. His expression was grim. So I suggest you get some rest and be prepared to convince them that keeping you alive is in everyone's best interest. No pressure. None at all. He started to walk away, then paused. Elena? Yes? Don't run. When you meet them tomorrow, don't try to flee or hide or make yourself smaller. Stand your ground the way you did at my door. That's the only chance you have. Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with the city lights and the terrible knowledge that her life now depended on convincing a room full of criminals that she was worth more alive than dead. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the disorienting realization that she wasn't in her own bed. For a moment, she lay still, her mind struggling to piece together where she was and why silk sheets felt so foreign against her skin. Then memory crashed back. The destroyed car, Adrian's ultimatum, the penthouse that was now her cage. She sat up slowly, her body stiff from restless half-sleep. The bedside clock read 9:47 a.m. She'd managed maybe 3 hours of actual rest, her dreams filled with dark eyes and whispered warnings about choices that weren't really choices at all. A soft knock came at the door. "Miss Hart?" A woman's voice, professional and careful. "Mr. Voss asked me to bring you breakfast and help you prepare for this morning's meeting." Elena pulled on the robe she'd found hanging in the closet, silk, of course, ridiculously expensive, and opened the door. A woman in her mid-40s stood there with a tray of coffee and pastries, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She had kind eyes, but a posture that suggested she'd seen things that had taught her to be cautious. "I'm Marie," she said, stepping inside. "I manage Mr. Voss's household. He thought you might need some assistance." "I don't need a servant," Elena said quietly. "I'm not a servant. I'm someone who knows how these meetings work." Marie set the tray on a small table near the window and turned to face her. "And if I'm being honest, Miss Hart, you're going to need all the help you can get." Something in her tone made Elena's stomach tighten. "That bad?" "Let's just say that the people you're about to meet don't easily trust outsiders, especially outsiders who appear in Mr. Voss's life without warning and immediately become a security risk." Marie poured coffee with steady hands, but they respect strength, directness. People who don't waste their time. I'm an art restorer who asks someone to turn down their music. I don't know how to be the person they need me to be. Then don't be. Marie handed her the coffee. Be exactly who you were when you knocked on that door. That's the woman who caught his attention. That's the woman who might survive this. Elena wrapped her hands around the warm cup, drawing comfort from something so simple and familiar. What if I can't convince them? Marie's expression softened slightly. Then Mr. Voss will have to make a choice between his organization and you. And trust me, Miss Hart, you don't want to put him in that position. 2 hours later, Elena stood in front of a mirror, barely recognizing herself. Marie had worked quietly and efficiently, transforming her from exhausted and rumpled into something that approached polished. The black dress was simple but elegant, fitted without being revealing. Her dark hair had been smoothed back into a low twist. The only makeup was a touch of concealer to hide the shadows under her eyes. You look like someone who belongs here, Marie said, studying her work. I don't belong here. No, but you need them to believe you might. Marie stepped back. Remember, don't apologize for existing. Don't make yourself smaller. And whatever you do, don't show fear. I'm terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just don't let them see it. The door opened and Adrian walked in. He'd traded last night's casual attire for a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his expression unreadable. When his eyes landed on her, something flickered across his face too quickly for her to identify. You clean up well, he said. Marie's work, not mine. Marie knows what she's doing. He turned to the older woman. Thank you. That'll be all. Marie nodded and slipped out, leaving them alone. Adrian moved closer, and Elena had to resist the urge to step back. He reached up, and she flinched slightly before realizing he was adjusting the collar of her dress. Relax, he said quietly. If I wanted to hurt you, I've had plenty of opportunities. That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. His hands dropped away, but he didn't move back. Are you ready for this? No, but I don't think that matters. It doesn't. Adrian's jaw tightened. They're waiting in the conference room. 5 of them, my inner circle. Each one has been with me since the beginning, and each one has veto power over major decisions. Like whether to protect me. Like whether to protect you. He studied her face, his dark eyes searching for something. Thomas will argue you're a liability. Dmitri will want to send you away. Nina will probably suggest elimination as the cleanest solution. Marcus and James might go either way depending on how you present yourself. Elena's mouth went dry. And you? I've already made my position clear. But if the vote goes against you, I'll have to choose between maintaining unity in my organization and keeping you safe. That's not a choice I want to make. Then maybe you should let me go now, before it gets more complicated. It's already complicated. The moment Volkov's people marked your car, you became part of this, whether either of us wanted it or not. Adrian's hand came up to cup her jaw, the touch gentle despite the calluses on his palm. But I need you to understand something, Elena. Once we walk through that door, I can't protect you with sentiment. They need to see value in keeping you alive that goes beyond my personal interest. What value could I possibly have? That's what you're going to tell them. He dropped his hand and stepped back, the professional mask sliding back into place. Come on, it's time. The conference room was all dark wood and leather, with windows that overlooked the city from 20 stories up. 5 people sat around a massive table, and every one of them turned to watch as Elena entered behind Adrian. Thomas, she recognized, the suited man from Adrian's apartment that first night, built like a boxer with eyes that missed nothing. Next to him sat a woman in her 30s with sharp features and sharper eyes, her blonde hair cut in a severe bob. That had to be Nina. Across from them, a heavy-set man with graying hair and a face like weathered stone sat beside a younger man with nervous energy and restless hands. Dmitri and either Marcus or James, Elena couldn't tell which. The 5th person surprised her. He was younger than the others, maybe mid-20s, with dark skin and an easy smile that didn't match the tension in the room. Everyone, Adrian said, his voice carrying the weight of command. This is Elena Hart. Elena, meet the people who keep this organization running. The liability, Nina said, her voice cool. We've heard about you. Elena's hands wanted to shake. She forced them to stay still at her sides. I'm sure you have. Sit down, Adrian gestured to a chair at the head of the table. Let's get this over with. Elena sat, acutely aware of 5 pairs of eyes, assessing her every movement. Adrian remained standing, a position of power that didn't go unnoticed. Thomas spoke first, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed. Let me make sure I understand the situation. You knocked on Adrian's door at 3 a.m. to complain about noise. He offered you money. You refused. And now, less than a week later, you're living in his penthouse under armed guard because Volkov's people have marked you as a target. Does that about sum it up? Yes, Elena said quietly. And what exactly did you think would happen when you refused that money? I thought he'd turn down his music and I'd go back to bed. A snort of laughter came from the younger man. James, Elena realized. She actually thought that. Look at her face. This isn't funny, Nina cut in. We have a civilian living in Adrian's private residence, marked by our enemies, completely untrained and unprepared for what's coming. She's a walking security breach. She's also sitting right here, Elena said, her voice stronger than she felt. If you're going to discuss whether I live or die, at least have the courtesy to address me directly. The room went silent. Nina's eyes narrowed. You've got nerve, I'll give you that. I've got nothing else. Elena met her gaze steadily. I didn't ask to be here. I didn't ask for my car to be destroyed or my life to be turned upside down. But here I am, and apparently my survival depends on convincing you that I'm worth the trouble. So yes, I have nerve. It's the only asset I've got left. Dmitri leaned forward, his massive hands flat on the table. What do you do, Miss Hart? When you're not complaining to dangerous men about noise. I'm an art restorer. I work at the Hartwell Museum. An art restorer. He said it like he was tasting the words. You fix old paintings. I preserve them, repair damage, bring them back to what they were meant to be. And that's supposed to be valuable to us how? Elena took a breath, thinking fast. You asked me what I do. I restore things that everyone else thinks are beyond saving. I look at damage that seems catastrophic and find ways to repair it without destroying what makes the piece valuable in the first place. I work with patience, precision, and an understanding that rushing the process will only make things worse. Marcus, the one she'd finally identified by his quieter demeanor, tilted his head slightly. That's a metaphor. That's my job. How you interpret it is up to you. Clever, Thomas said, but he didn't sound impressed. But cleverness doesn't stop bullets, Miss Hart, and Volkov's people aren't going to care about your steady hands or your metaphors when they come for you. I know that. Do you? Nina leaned forward. Do you understand that by being here, you're not just a target, you're a weakness? Every resource we spend protecting you is a resource diverted from actual operations. Every moment Adrian spends worrying about your safety is a moment he's not focused on running this organization. I understand that I'm a problem. Elena's hands were shaking now, but she kept her voice level. But I also understand that I didn't become a problem by choice. Your enemy made me one, and sending me away or... She stumbled slightly over the next words. Eliminating me won't change the fact that they know I exist. It won't undo whatever message they were trying to send by destroying my car. So what do you suggest? Dmitri asked. We just accept this complication and hope for the best? I suggest you use it. The words came out before Elena had fully thought them through, but once they were out, she committed to them. You said I'm a weakness. Fine, make me look like one. Let Volkov's people think I'm important enough to Adrian that keeping me safe requires significant resources. Draw them out, make them overextend trying to get to me. Use you as bait, Nina said slowly. Use me as an asset. There's a difference. Thomas barked out a laugh. She's proposing we dangle her in front of our enemies like a worm on a hook. That's either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, Elena admitted. But at least it gives you something useful instead of just a liability to manage. Adrian, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. No. Every eye in the room turned to him. Adrian, Thomas started. I said no. We're not using her as bait. We're not putting her in a position where Volkov's people can get to her. His voice was hard, leaving no room for argument. Find another way to draw them out. There might not be another way, Nina pointed out. She's right that eliminating her doesn't solve the problem. They already know she exists. They already think she matters. We might as well make that work for us. Not happening. You're letting personal feelings cloud your judgment, Dmitri said carefully. That's dangerous. My judgment is fine. What's dangerous is taking unnecessary risks with civilian lives. Adrian's jaw was tight. We protect her. We keep her secure. And we deal with Volkov the same way we've been dealing with him for 5 years, by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than he is. James spoke up for the first time since his earlier laugh. And if being smarter means using the advantage she's offering, then we find a different advantage. Elena felt something shift in the room, a tension that hadn't been there before. These people weren't just Adrian's employees. They were his partners, his equals in some way she didn't fully understand. And by refusing their suggestion, he was putting his authority on the line. Adrian, she said quietly, can I speak with you, privately? He looked at her sharply, clearly not expecting the interruption. For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Then he nodded curtly. 5 minutes. Stay here. He walked out, and after a brief hesitation, Elena followed him into the hallway. The door closed behind them, leaving them alone in the carpeted corridor. What are you doing? Adrian demanded, his voice low and tight. Asking you not to make this decision for me. This isn't your decision to make. You don't understand what you're offering. I understand perfectly. I'm offering to be useful instead of just protected, to give you something that justifies the resources you're spending on me. Elena stepped closer, forcing herself to meet his eyes. You told me last night that I became a weakness. Let me be a strength instead. By putting yourself in danger. I'm already in danger. At least this way it means something. Adrian's hand came up to grip the back of his neck, a gesture of frustration she was starting to recognize. You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me. Explain it to me instead of just making decisions and expecting me to go along with them. Oh, you want to know what I'm protecting you from? His voice dropped, dangerous and soft. Volkov doesn't just kill people, Elena. He makes examples of them. He takes his time, makes sure everyone knows what happens when you cross him. The last person he thought I cared about, Adrian broke off, his jaw clenching. They found pieces of her over the course of 3 weeks. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. I didn't. No, you didn't, because I don't tell you the worst parts. I don't tell you about the nightmares I still have, or the sounds I can't forget, or the fact that I swore after that I would never, ever let someone become a target because of me again. He stepped closer, crowding into her space. And now you're standing here, offering to paint an even bigger target on your back, and expecting me to just agree because it's strategically sound. I'm not her, Elena said softly. Whoever she was, whatever happened, I'm not her. I know that. Then trust me to make my own choices, even if they scare you. They don't scare me. They terrify me. Adrian's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. You have no idea what you've become in less than a week. What have I become? Something I can't afford to lose. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was ready to examine too closely. Elena's breath caught, her heart hammering against her ribs. This close, she could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. Adrian? The door opened. Thomas stuck his head out. We need a decision. Nina's getting impatient. Adrian stepped back, the moment breaking. His expression shifted back to the controlled mask he wore like armor. We're coming. Back in the conference room, Elena took her seat with new resolve. Adrian remained standing, his hands braced on the back of his chair. Here's what's going to happen, he said, his voice carrying absolute authority. Elena stays under protection. We increase security, double the surveillance on her movements, and make it clear to anyone watching that she's valuable. But we don't actively use her as bait. We don't put her in situations where Volkov's people can get to her easily. That's a half measure, Nina protested. That's the decision. Adrian's eyes swept the room. Anyone have a problem with it? Silence. Thomas sighed. You're the boss. I am, which means this discussion is over. Adrian straightened. Dmitri, I want new security protocols in place by tonight. James, work with our intelligence contacts. I want to know every move Volkov makes before he makes it. Marcus, reach out to our allies. Make sure they know we're protecting her and why. Nina, I know, the blonde woman said. I'll handle the police investigation into her car. Make sure it goes nowhere useful. Good. Adrian's gaze landed on Elena. As for you, you follow the rules. No going anywhere without security. No contact with anyone from your old life without clearance. And absolutely no heroics. Understood? Understood, Elena said quietly. Then we're done here. Adrian moved toward the door. Thomas? Marcus? With me. We need to discuss the shipment coming in tomorrow. The rest of you know what to do. The room emptied quickly, people moving with the efficiency of those who'd worked together for years. Within minutes, only Nina and Elena remained. The blonde woman studied her with cool assessment. You're either very brave or very stupid. I haven't decided which yet. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true. Nina stood, smoothing down her tailored jacket. A word of advice, Miss Hart. Adrian is protecting you now, but protection has limits. The moment you become more trouble than you're worth, that protection disappears. So whatever you think is developing between you two, her smile was sharp. Remember that his first loyalty is to this organization. It always has been. It always will be. I'm not trying to replace his loyalties. Good. Because you couldn't. Nina headed for the door, then paused. One more thing. The woman he mentioned, the one Volkov killed, her name was Sarah. She thought she could handle being part of this world too. She was wrong. Then she was gone, leaving Elena alone in the conference room with a view of the city and the weight of a warning she didn't quite know how to process. The rest of the day passed in a strange limbo. Marie brought lunch, food Elena barely tasted. Thomas appeared periodically to update security protocols, speaking to her like she was a valuable package rather than a person. By evening, Elena felt like she was going to crawl out of her skin from the combination of boredom and anxiety. She was standing at the windows, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk fell, when Adrian finally returned. He looked tired, his tie loosened and his jacket discarded somewhere. How are you holding up? He asked, pouring himself a drink. I've been alone in this apartment for 6 hours with nothing to do but think. How do you think I'm holding up? Point taken. He brought her a glass of wine she hadn't asked for. Tomorrow will be better. Marie will take you shopping for clothes, and James is setting up a secured laptop so you can at least read or watch something. I don't need new clothes. You need more than one dress. Adrian's tone suggested this wasn't up for debate. And before you argue about the expense, remember that you're representing my organization now. Appearances matter, Elena took a sip of wine, letting it settle her nerves slightly. Nina told me about Sarah. Adrian's expression hardened. She had no right. Maybe not, but I needed to know. Elena turned to face him fully. You loved her. I thought I did. I was young and stupid and believed that keeping her close would keep her safe. He stared into his glass. I was wrong. What happened? She got brave. Thought she could help by gathering information on Volkov's operations. He found out, made an example. Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless, in a way that suggested he'd locked the real feelings down deep. By the time we found her, there wasn't enough left to bury. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be careful. Be smart. Be alive. He looked at her then, and the raw pain in his eyes made her chest tighten. I can't go through that again, Elena. I won't. Then teach me. Teach you what? How to survive in your world. You said I need to be careful and smart. Fine. Show me how. Stop just protecting me and start preparing me. Elena set down her wine glass. I don't want to be helpless. I don't want to be the weakness that gets people killed, so teach me what I need to know. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, studying her. You're serious. Completely. It won't be pleasant. The things you'll need to learn, I don't need pleasant. I need practical. Elena lifted her chin. I'm already in this, Adrian. I might as well know how to fight back. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or approval. All right. Starting tomorrow, Thomas will teach you basic self-defense. You'll learn how to recognize threats, how to read a room, how to disappear if you need to. He stepped closer. But you follow instructions exactly. No improvising, no heroics. If someone tells you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. Good. His hand came up, fingers brushing a strand of hair back from her face. You're full of surprises, Elena Hart. So are you. Is that good or bad? I haven't decided yet. His laugh was soft, surprised. Fair enough. They stood there in the gathering darkness, the city lights painting everything in shades of gold and shadow. Elena felt the air between them shift, charged with something she didn't have a name for, but could feel building like static electricity before a storm. I should let you rest, Adrian said, but he didn't move away. I'm not tired. Liar, you've got shadows under your eyes. So do you. I've earned mine. His thumb traced along her jaw, the touch gentle despite the calluses. You shouldn't have to earn yours. Elena's heart was racing now, her breath shallow. Adrian! The phone rang, shrill and jarring. Adrian swore softly and stepped back, pulling it from his pocket. What? Elena watched his expression change as he listened, sharpening, hardening into something dangerous. When? He demanded. Where? Is she secure? A pause. Don't let her out of your sight. I'm on my way. He ended the call and was already moving toward the door. What happened? Elena asked. Your father just walked into one of Volkov's clubs asking for protection. Claims someone's trying to kill him. Adrian grabbed his jacket, which means Volkov now knows exactly who you are and exactly how to get to you. Elena felt the floor drop out from under her. My father, I haven't spoken to him in 3 years. How did he even? Doesn't matter. What matters is that Volkov has leverage now, and he's going to use it. Adrian's jaw was tight. Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone except Marie or Thomas. I mean it, Elena. No one. Where are you going? To make sure your father lives long enough to regret his stupidity. He paused at the door. And to find out exactly what debts he's gotten himself into that would make him desperate enough to walk into a lion's den. Then he was gone, and Elena was alone with the terrible knowledge that her carefully buried past had just exploded into her present in the worst possible way. Elena paced the length of the penthouse windows for the 3rd time, her reflection ghosting across the glass like an accusation. 2 hours had passed since Adrian left, and every minute felt like it was stretching into something unbearable. She'd tried sitting, tried reading, tried convincing herself that everything would be fine. None of it worked. Her father, after 3 years of silence, of carefully constructed distance, he'd somehow dragged himself into her life at the worst possible moment. The irony was almost funny. She'd spent most of her childhood trying to disappear because of him, and now his reappearance might get them both killed. The elevator chimed. Elena spun around, her heart jumping into her throat. The doors slid open and Marie stepped out carrying a tray with tea and what looked like dinner Elena definitely wouldn't be able to eat. "You're going to wear a hole in that carpet," Marie said mildly, setting the tray down. "And before you ask, I don't have any updates. Mr. Voss will call when there's something to report. It's been 2 hours." "These things take time. Negotiations, discussions." Marie poured the tea with steady hands. "Your father walked into a very complicated situation. Extracting him without making things worse requires finesse." Elena laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "My father doesn't know the meaning of finesse. He knows gambling, drinking, and making promises he can't keep. That's about it." "You're not close." "That's an understatement." Elena wrapped her arms around herself. "I left home the day I turned 18 and never looked back. Changed my phone number, moved cities, built a life where he couldn't find me. And now he's found you anyway." Marie handed her the tea. "Family has a way of doing that, no matter how far you run." "He's not family. He's just the man whose mistakes I've spent a decade trying to escape." Elena took the cup but didn't drink. "What kind of debts do you think he's gotten into?" "The kind that make men walk into Marcus Volkov's territory begging for protection." Marie's expression was carefully neutral. "Which means they're significant and recent." The words settled heavy in Elena's chest. She thought about her father, always chasing the next big score, the next sure thing, the next opportunity that would fix everything. She'd lost count of how many times they'd moved when she was a child, always one step ahead of whoever he'd borrowed from this time. By the time she was 16, she'd learned to pack a bag and be ready to leave within an hour. By 18, she'd learned to leave him behind entirely. "If Volkov has him," Elena started, "then Mr. Voss will negotiate his release. That's what he's doing right now." Marie moved to the windows, looking out at the city. "Though I'll be honest with you, Miss Hart, your father put himself in this position, and the price for getting him out might be higher than you want to pay." "What do you mean?" "I mean that Volkov doesn't do anything without expecting something in return. If he's holding your father, it's because he wants leverage. And the best leverage he could possibly have right now is you." Elena's hands tightened on the cup. "You think this is a trap?" "I think your father showing up right now at Volkov's club claiming he needs protection, it's awfully convenient timing." Marie turned to look at her. "I'm not saying he's working with Volkov. I'm saying Volkov is very good at recognizing opportunities and using them." Before Elena could respond, her phone buzzed. The new one Thomas had given her that morning with exactly 3 contacts programmed in. Adrian's name flashed on the screen. She answered immediately. "What's happening?" "Your father is alive. Drunk, terrified, and babbling, but alive." Adrian's voice was tight with controlled anger. "He owes Volkov's people $200,000, gambling debts accumulated over the past 6 months." Elena closed her eyes. "Of course he does. Volkov is offering a deal. He'll forgive the debt in exchange for a meeting with you. Public place, neutral territory, just a talk." "That's insane. You can't possibly think—" "I don't, which is why I'm negotiating something else." Background noise filtered through the phone, voices, movement. "But I need to know something first. How much do you care if your father lives or dies?" The question landed like a physical blow. Elena sank into the nearest chair, her mind spinning. "That's not fair. It's the only question that matters right now. Because if I tell Volkov no, your father is dead by morning. If I try to buy him out, Volkov will know we're desperate and raise the price to something impossible. And if I agree to the meeting, you put me exactly where he wants me." "Exactly." Adrian's voice softened slightly. "So I'm asking you, Elena, what do you want me to do?" Elena thought about her father. Remembered him missing her school plays because he was at the track. Remembered moving in the middle of the night because the landlord was coming for rent they didn't have. Remembered being 12 years old and having to call her father's bookie to beg for more time because he'd passed out drunk and there was no one else to do it. She also remembered him teaching her to ride a bike, making her pancakes on Saturday mornings when things were good. The way he'd cried when her mother left, broken and ashamed and promising he'd do better. He never did better, but he was still her father. I can't let him die, she said quietly. Even after everything, I can't. I was afraid you'd say that, Adrian sighed. All right, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to offer Volkov money for your father's debts. Not all of it, just enough to show good faith. In exchange, he releases your father to my custody, and we negotiate a payment plan for the rest. Will he agree to that? Probably not, but it buys us time while I figure out what he really wants. A pause. And Elena? Whatever happens next, you stay in that apartment. You don't come to me, you don't try to help, you don't do anything except wait. Understood? Understood. I mean it. No heroics. I heard you. Good. I'll call you when I know more. He hung up before she could say anything else. Elena sat there with the phone in her hand, staring at Marie's worried face, and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. It was nearly midnight when the elevator chimed again. This time it was Thomas, his expression grim and his suit jacket missing. There was blood on his shirt cuff. Elena was on her feet immediately. What happened? Your father is downstairs in the car, alive but not exactly coherent. Thomas moved to the liquor cabinet and poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey. Volkov agreed to the deal. Sort of. Sort of? He's taking the money as a down payment, but he wants the full amount within 30 days. And he wants regular updates on your whereabouts as insurance. Elena felt her blood run cold. He wants to use me as collateral. Essentially, Thomas downed half the whiskey. Adrian told him to go to hell, obviously. But Volkov made it clear that if the debt isn't paid, he'll consider you fair game. You and your father both. Where's Adrian now? Cleaning up the mess your father made. Thomas's voice was hard. Literally. Turns out Volkov wasn't just holding him as leverage. He was sending a message. What kind of message? Thomas didn't answer, just pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. The image showed her father, or what was left of him. His face was swollen and bruised, one eye completely shut. His hands were bandaged, and there was blood on his shirt from what looked like a broken nose. They worked him over pretty good, Thomas said, pocketing the phone. Made sure we'd know exactly what Volkov is capable of. What he'll do if we don't play by his rules. Elena sank back into her chair, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. This is my fault. No, this is your father's fault for being a degenerate gambler who doesn't know when to quit. Thomas's voice softened slightly. But you're the one paying the price for it, which is why Adrian is downstairs right now, deciding whether to bring him up here or dump him at a hospital and be done with it. He wouldn't. He would. Your father is a liability we can't afford. The only reason he's still breathing is because Adrian knows it would destroy you if anything happened to him. Thomas finished his whiskey. So the question is, what do you want to do with him? Before Elena could answer, the elevator doors opened again. Adrian walked out supporting a man who barely resembled the father Elena remembered. Richard Hart had always been tall and broad-shouldered, with an easy smile and quick laugh that made people trust him even when they shouldn't. The man leaning heavily against Adrian was a broken shadow of that person, beaten, bloodied, and reeking of alcohol and fear. Elena. Her father's voice cracked when he saw her. Baby, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't mean for any of this. Shut up, Richard. Adrian's voice was ice. You don't get to talk yet. He half carried, half dragged her father to the couch and dropped him there without ceremony. Richard groaned, clutching his ribs. Marie, Adrian called. Medical kit. And coffee. Lots of coffee. Marie appeared from somewhere and disappeared just as quickly. Adrian turned to Elena, his expression unreadable. We need to talk. Privately. Elena followed him to the far side of the room, out of her father's earshot. This close, she could see the tension in Adrian's jaw, the barely controlled fury in his dark eyes. I paid Volkov $50,000 tonight as a down payment, he said quietly. I have 30 days to come up with the rest, or he considers the deal void, which means he can do whatever he wants to your father, and to you. I'll find a way to pay him back. With what? Your art restorer salary? Adrian's laugh was bitter. That debt is more than you'll make in 5 years, Elena. There is no paying me back. Then I'll work it off. I'll do whatever you need. What I need is for you to understand that this just got exponentially more complicated. He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting the perfect styling. Volkov knows about you now, knows you matter to me, and he's going to use that knowledge in every way he can. So what do? We keep you safe. We keep your father locked down somewhere he can't cause more damage. And we figure out what Volkov really wants. Because I guarantee it's not just money. Adrian glanced over at Richard, his expression disgusted. Did he ever tell you what he does for a living? He gambles, loses, moves on. That's what he's always done. Not anymore. For the past year, he's been running a moderately successful sports betting operation out of Atlantic City. Not legal, but not important enough for anyone to shut down either. Adrian's eyes were hard. Until 6 months ago, when he started borrowing money from Volkov's loan operation to cover losses he couldn't afford. Elena felt the pieces clicking together. Volkov wants the betting operation. Volkov wants leverage in Atlantic City. Your father's operation is small but established, with connections Volkov can exploit. The gambling debts were just a way to get hooks into him. Adrian moved closer, his voice dropping. And now he has hooks into you too, which makes you valuable in ways that have nothing to do with your father. I don't understand. You're Adrian Voss's weakness. The art restorer who somehow got under his skin in less than a week. The woman he's protecting at considerable expense and risk. Adrian's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Volkov is going to use that. And your father just gave him the perfect opening. Elena's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying that keeping you safe just became a lot more complicated and a lot more dangerous. His other hand settled on her waist, drawing her closer. I'm saying that every instinct I have is telling me to send you far away where Volkov can't touch you, but I know you won't go. You're right, I won't. Stubborn. Practical. Running won't solve this. Neither will staying, but at least if you run, you might survive. Elena looked up at him, at the man who'd become impossibly important in such a short time, and made a decision she knew she couldn't take back. I'm not running. I'm not hiding, and I'm not letting my father's mistakes define what happens next. She placed her hands flat against his chest, feeling his heartbeat through the expensive fabric of his shirt. You wanted to know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who keeps his word, someone who protects people even when it's inconvenient, someone who could have let my father die tonight but didn't because he knew it would hurt me. Don't make me into something I'm not, Elena. I'm not. I'm just seeing clearly for the first time in a long time. She stood on her toes, bringing them almost level. So teach me what I need to know. Make me useful instead of just protected. And let me help you figure out what Volkov really wants. Adrian's eyes searched her face, looking for something. You're serious about this? Completely. It could get you killed. Doing nothing could get me killed too. At least this way I'm part of the solution. He was quiet for a long moment, his hands tightening on her waist. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. A real smile that transformed his face into something younger and less guarded. You're going to be trouble, aren't you? Probably. Good. He pulled her fully against him, and Elena's breath caught at the sudden intimacy. I'm tired of people who do exactly what they're told. It's boring. I should probably get back to my father. He can wait. He's not going anywhere. Adrian's voice dropped lower. But you need to understand something first. If you're doing this, really doing this, not just saying brave things to make yourself feel better, then you follow my rules. All of them. No exceptions. What rules? You train with Thomas every day. Hand-to-hand combat, weapons familiarization, threat assessment. You learn to shoot, to fight, to run when you need to. His thumb traced along her jaw. You don't go anywhere without security. You don't make contact with anyone from your old life. And you tell me the truth, always, even when it's difficult. That's it? One more thing. His eyes locked on hers. You don't sacrifice yourself trying to protect me or anyone else. If I give you an order to run, you run. If I tell you to hide, you hide. Your safety comes first, always, non-negotiable. Elena thought about arguing, thought about pointing out the hypocrisy of him demanding she prioritize her safety while he threw himself into danger. But the expression on his face stopped her. There was fear there, buried deep but visible to someone who'd learned to look carefully. He'd lost someone before, and he was terrified of losing her the same way. "Okay," she said softly. "I promise." "You promise what, exactly?" "I promise to train, to follow your rules, to tell you the truth." She hesitated. "And I promise to run if you tell me to, even if I don't want to." "Even if you don't want to," he repeated. "That's the most important part." A groan from the couch interrupted them. Richard was trying to sit up, his movements clumsy and pained. "Elena," he called out, his voice thick. "Baby, please, I need to explain." Adrian stepped back, the moment breaking. "Deal with him. Find out what else he hasn't told us. I need to make some calls." He walked away, already pulling out his phone, leaving Elena to face the man who'd shaped so much of her childhood with his absences and broken promises. She crossed to the couch and sat in the chair across from him, maintaining distance. Up close, the damage was worse. His face a mess of bruises and cuts, his hand shaking as he tried to hold the coffee Marie had brought. "You look terrible," Elena said quietly. "I feel worse." Richard tried to smile, then winced. "You look good, though. Grown up. Beautiful. Just like your mother." "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't try to charm me. Don't try to make this about anything except what it is." Elena's voice was harder than she'd known she could make it. "You owe dangerous people $200,000. You walked into their territory begging for help, and in doing so you put a target on my back. So no, we're not doing the part where you tell me I'm beautiful and pretend this is a reunion." Richard's face crumpled. "I didn't know they'd come after you, I swear, Elena. I had no idea you were connected to—" He gestured vaguely at the penthouse. "To any of this. How did you even find me?" "I didn't. I was looking for protection from Volkov, and someone mentioned that Adrian Voss had taken an interest in a woman named Elena Hart, who worked at the museum. I thought it couldn't be you. My Elena would never be involved with someone like him, but I was desperate, and I thought maybe if it was you, maybe you could help." He trailed off, tears streaming down his battered face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Elena wanted to feel sympathy, wanted to feel something other than the cold anger that had settled in her chest. But looking at her father, broken and pathetic and still making excuses, all she felt was exhausted. "What exactly did you do to owe that much money?" "I was running a sports book. Good business, steady income. But I got greedy. Started taking bigger bets, offering better odds than I could cover. When I lost big, I borrowed from Volkov's operation to stay afloat." Richard set down the coffee with shaking hands. "I thought I could pay it back. Thought the next season would turn around. But it just kept getting worse. So instead of walking away, you kept digging." "I couldn't walk away. They made it clear that if I tried, they'd come after everyone I'd ever borrowed from, everyone I'd ever worked with." He looked at her with bloodshot eyes. "I was trying to protect people. You were trying to protect yourself. Like always. That's not fair, but it's completely fair. You've spent my entire life making bad decisions and expecting other people to clean up the mess. The only difference now is that your mess might get me killed." Elena stood up. "Adrian paid $50,000 tonight to keep you breathing. You have 30 days to figure out how to make this right, or Volkov will finish what he started." "I can't make this right. I don't have that kind of money." "Then figure out what you do have. Information, connections. Something Volkov wants more than your debt." She looked down at him, feeling nothing but a distant kind of pity. "Because if you can't be useful, you're just another liability. And Adrian doesn't keep liabilities around for long." She walked away before he could respond, her heart pounding. Behind her, she could hear her father crying, broken, desperate sounds that once would have torn her apart. Now they just felt like background noise. Adrian was in his office, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and intense. He looked up when Elena entered, then held up one finger indicating he'd be done in a moment. "I don't care what it costs," he was saying. "I want every piece of information we have on Richard Hart's operation. Clients, bookies, connections, everything. And I want to know who else Volkov has been targeting in Atlantic City. Yes, by tomorrow." "Good." He ended the call and set the phone down. "How'd it go?" About as well as expected. He's sorry. He didn't mean for this to happen, and he has no idea how to fix it. Elena sank into one of the leather chairs. He's useless. Most people are when they're that scared. Adrian came around the desk to perch on its edge, close enough that she could feel his body heat. But useless doesn't mean we can't use him. What do you mean? Your father has been running a betting operation for a year. He knows people, has connections, has information about Volkov's loan operation that could be valuable. Adrian's eyes were sharp. If we're smart about this, we can turn your father from a liability into an asset. He's too scared to be useful. Fear can be motivating. We just need to point it in the right direction. Adrian reached down and took her hand, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm. But that's tomorrow's problem. Tonight, you need rest. I can't sleep. Not with everything. Yes, you can. Because tomorrow, Thomas starts your training. And trust me, you're going to need every bit of energy you can get. Elena looked up at him, at the man who'd become her protector and her complication, and something she didn't have words for yet. Will you stay? Just for a while? Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Surprise, maybe, or pleasure. Are you sure? I'm not asking you to. I just don't want to be alone right now. With my father here and Volkov out there and everything feeling like it's spinning out of control. She squeezed his hand. Please. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. Okay, but just until you fall asleep. He followed her to her room, and for the first time since this all started, Elena felt something that approximated peace. She lay down on the bed, still fully clothed, and Adrian sat in the chair by the window, his presence a solid comfort in the darkness. Tell me something, Elena said quietly. Something real. Like what? I don't know. Something about you that isn't scary or dangerous or calculated. Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then his voice came through the darkness, soft and almost vulnerable. When I was 8 years old, I wanted to be a pilot. Used to build model planes and hang them from my ceiling. Had this whole fantasy about flying away somewhere no one could touch me. He laughed quietly. Didn't work out that way. What happened? Life. Reality. The understanding that some people don't get to fly away. They have to stand and fight for everything they want to keep. He shifted in the chair. But sometimes, late at night when the city's quiet, I still think about it. What it would be like to just go. Elena felt her throat tighten. Why don't you? Because I built something here. Something that matters. People depend on me, and I don't abandon people who depend on me. A pause. Not anymore. Not since Sarah. Not since Sarah. Elena closed her eyes, letting his voice wash over her. Thank you. For what? For being honest? For staying? For not treating me like I'm too fragile to handle the truth? You're not fragile, Elena. You're probably the strongest person I've met in a long time. You just don't know it yet. Those were the last words she heard before sleep finally claimed her, pulling her down into darkness that felt almost safe with Adrian watching over her from the shadows. Elena woke to the sound of voices, low, urgent, and coming from somewhere beyond her closed door. For a moment she lay still, disoriented by silk sheets and morning light filtering through unfamiliar windows. Then memory crashed back and she sat up quickly, her heart already racing. The chair by the window was empty. Adrian was gone. She threw on the robe and stepped into the hallway, following the voices to the main living area. What she found made her stop in the doorway. Adrian stood near the windows with Thomas and Nina, all three of them focused on a laptop screen. Her father sat slumped on the couch where she'd left him last night, looking even worse in the harsh morning light. And standing near the kitchen, watching everything with careful eyes, was a man Elena had never seen before, tall and lean with silver hair and a face that suggested he'd seen too much and forgotten none of it. Elena. Adrian looked up, his expression unreadable. Good. We need to talk. What's going on? This is Detective Marcus Chen, Adrian said, gesturing to the silver-haired man. He's been on Volkov's payroll for 3 years, feeding us information about police investigations and upcoming raids. He came to me this morning with something interesting. Detective Chen stepped forward, his voice gravelly from what sounded like decades of cigarettes. Miss Hart, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. What circumstances? The kind where I have to tell you that Marcus Volkov put out a contract on your father 12 hours ago. $500,000 to whoever brings him in alive. Chen's eyes were sympathetic but direct. And as of 4 a.m. this morning, he added you to that contract. Same terms. Alive and unharmed. Elena felt the floor tilt beneath her. Why would he do that? Adrian paid him. And
We had 30 days for the debt, Adrian interrupted, his voice tight. But Volkov isn't interested in the money anymore. He's interested in leverage, and having both you and your father in his possession gives him more leverage than any amount of cash. So the debt was just a pretense, a way to make us think we had time while he positioned his people. Adrian's jaw was tight with controlled fury. He played us, and I should have seen it coming.
Thomas looked up from the laptop. We've identified at least 6 bounty hunters who've already accepted the contract. 2 of them are in the city as of this morning. The others are en route. Bounty hunters, Elena repeated, the words feeling surreal. Like in movies. Like in real life, except messier and with fewer rules, Nina said. These aren't cops or even professional criminals. They're freelancers who'll do anything for money, which makes them unpredictable and dangerous.
Elena sank into the nearest chair, her mind racing. So what do we do? We move you, Adrian said immediately.
Both of you. Somewhere Volkov's people can't track you while we figure out our next move. No. The word came out before Elena could think it through, but once it was out there, she committed to it. No running. You said it yourself. Running doesn't solve this. Elena, you also said that if I was doing this, I needed to be part of the solution. So let me help figure this out instead of just hiding while you handle everything. She looked around at the assembled faces. What does Volkov really want? It can't just be leverage. There has to be something more. Detective Chen exchanged a look with Adrian. She's sharp. Too sharp for her own good, Adrian muttered, but he gestured for Chen to continue. The detective pulled out a folder and laid several photos on the coffee table. Volkov's been quietly building an empire in Atlantic City for the past 2 years. Casinos, hotels, real estate, all legitimate on the surface, but funded by money laundering and backed by his organization. Your father's betting operation is small, but it has connections to every major casino in the city. Connections Volkov can exploit. So he wants my father's operation, Elena said slowly. But why me? Because you're Adrian Voss's weakness, Nina said bluntly. And having leverage over Adrian means having leverage over every operation he runs in this city. Volkov's been trying to muscle in on Adrian's territory for years. If he can force Adrian into concessions by threatening you, he wins without firing a shot. Elena looked at Adrian, seeing the tension in his shoulders, the careful control in his expression. Is that true? Yes. His voice was flat. Which is why you need to be somewhere safe while I deal with this. Or, Elena said carefully, we give him what he thinks he wants. The room went silent. Explain, Adrian said, his eyes narrowing. You said I could be useful as bait, that drawing Volkov out might give you an opening. Elena's heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. So let's do that. Let him think he can get to me. Set a trap. Absolutely not, Adrian said immediately. We've already discussed this. We discussed it when the situation was different. Now, there are bounty hunters actively looking for me. Hiding just delays the inevitable. Elena stood up, facing him directly. But if we control when and where they find me, we can turn it into an advantage. She's not wrong, Thomas said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. What? I'm just saying, if they're coming for her anyway, we might as well use it. Thank you for that stunning contribution, Adrian said acidly. But no, it's too dangerous. Everything is too dangerous at this point, Elena shot back. Your apartment is too dangerous. This penthouse is too dangerous. Walking down the street is too dangerous. So we might as well be dangerous in a way that helps instead of just reacting. Adrian's hands clenched into fists at his sides. You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me. Stop protecting me from information and tell me exactly what you're afraid of. I'm afraid of finding pieces of you scattered across 3 city blocks. The words exploded out of him, raw and uncontrolled. I'm afraid of getting the call that they took you while I was too busy being strategic to keep you safe. I'm afraid of... He broke off, running both hands through his hair. I'm afraid of losing someone else because I thought I could outsmart monsters who don't care about strategy. The room was completely silent. Elena could feel everyone's eyes on them, could sense the weight of what Adrian had just revealed. She crossed to him slowly, aware she was about to make a choice that would change everything. I'm not Sarah, she said softly, placing her hands on his chest, and I'm not asking you to sacrifice me for strategy. I'm asking you to trust me to be part of this, to let me help instead of just being someone you protect. Adrian's hands came up to cover hers. You don't know what you're asking. I know exactly what I'm asking. I'm asking you to treat me like a partner instead of a victim. She looked up at him, seeing the fear and fury and something deeper in his dark eyes. You told me to stand my ground, to be strong, to not make myself smaller. So let me do that. If anything happens to you, then we deal with it, together. Elena squeezed his hands. But hiding me away isn't keeping me safe anymore. It's just delaying when they find me. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked past her at Detective Chen. What kind of trap are we talking about? Wait, you're actually considering this? Nina's voice was sharp with disbelief. I'm considering all options. That's what you pay me to do. Adrian's voice was back under control, the momentary vulnerability locked away. Chen? The detective spread more photos across the table. Volkov's hosting a charity gala tomorrow night. 500 guests, maximum security, completely public. He does it every year. Great PR, makes him look legitimate. If Elena showed up there with appropriate escort, it would send a message. That she's under my protection, Adrian said slowly, and that you're not afraid of him, that you're willing to walk into his territory and dare him to make a move. Chen tapped one of the photos. The venue has multiple exits. Heavy civilian presence means he can't do anything overt, and we'd have advance notice of his security setup. Thomas leaned forward. We could position our people throughout the venue, plain clothes mixed in with the guests. Anyone makes a move toward Elena, we intercept them before they get close. It's risky, Nina said. Too many variables. Too many ways it could go wrong. Everything is risky at this point, Elena said, echoing her earlier words. At least this way we're controlling the risk. Adrian was quiet, his expression unreadable. Elena could see him working through scenarios, calculating odds, weighing outcomes. Finally, he looked at her father, who'd been silent throughout the entire exchange. Richard, you've been to these galas before, haven't you? Elena's father looked up, startled. A few times. When I was running bigger operations, why? Because you're going to tell us everything you know about Volkov's security setup. Guard positions, blind spots, escape routes, everything. Adrian's voice was cold. And then you're going to do exactly what we tell you, when we tell you, without question. Understood? Richard nodded quickly. Whatever you need. What I need is for you to stop being useless. Adrian turned back to the group. All right, we do this. But on my terms, with my people, and Elena doesn't move without 3 layers of security. Adrian, Nina started. That's the decision. If anyone has a problem with it, speak now or accept it. His tone made it clear there was no middle ground. No one spoke. Good. Thomas, I want full security protocols designed by tonight. Nina, reach out to our people inside Volkov's organization. I want to know his exact movements tomorrow, who he's meeting with, everything. Chen, get me blueprints of the venue and a list of everyone on the guest list. Adrian's gaze landed on Elena. And you train with Thomas all day today. No arguments, no breaks. If we're doing this, you need to at least know how to defend yourself. The next 12 hours were the most exhausting of Elena's life. Thomas was a patient but demanding teacher, drilling her on basic self-defense moves until her muscles screamed and her mind went numb from repetition. Again, he said for what felt like the 100th time. Someone grabs you from behind. What do you do? Elena repeated the motion. Drop her weight, slam her elbow back, turn and strike. Thomas caught her arm easily, his expression neutral. Better. But you're still hesitating. In a real situation, that hesitation gets you killed. He released her and stepped back. Take 5. Drink some water. Elena collapsed onto the mat, her entire body trembling from exertion. They'd been at this for 6 hours with only brief breaks, and every part of her hurt. But she was learning. Slowly, painfully, she was learning how to fight back instead of just freeze. You're doing good, Thomas said, sitting down beside her. Better than I expected for someone who's never thrown a punch before. That's a low bar. True, but you're meeting it. He handed her a bottle of water. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you really doing this? The gala, the training, all of it. You could ask Adrian to send you somewhere safe. He'd do it if you pushed hard enough, so why stay? Elena took a long drink of water, considering her answer. Because running away is what I've always done. My whole life, I've made myself invisible, stayed small, avoided conflict. And it never actually made me safe. It just made me alone. And Adrian? What about him? Thomas smiled slightly. Come on, I've known him for 7 years. I've never seen him like this. Never seen him willing to risk this much for anyone. We're not, Elena trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. Aren't you? Thomas stood up, offering her a hand. Look, I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. I'm just saying that what's happening between you two is affecting his decision-making, which means it's affecting all of us. So I need to know, are you in this? Really in this? Or are you going to run the first time things get truly scary? Elena let him pull her to her feet. I stood at his door in bunny slippers and told the most dangerous man in the city to turn down his music. I refused his money. I'm training to fight people who want to kidnap me. I'm planning to walk into my enemy's territory tomorrow night wearing a dress and heels and daring him to make a move. She met Thomas's eyes steadily. Does that sound like someone who runs? Thomas studied her for a moment, then nodded. No. It sounds like someone who's either very brave or very crazy. Probably both. Definitely both. He moved back to the center of the mat. Come on, let's work on your reaction time. If someone pulls a weapon, you need to move before you think. They trained for 3 more hours before Adrian finally appeared in the doorway. That's enough, he said. Elena needs to rest before tomorrow. We're not done, Thomas started. Yes, you are. She's exhausted and you're pushing too hard. Adrian's voice carried an edge of command. Thank you, Thomas. That'll be all for today. Thomas looked like he wanted to argue, but he just nodded and left. Adrian crossed to where Elena stood, swaying slightly on the mat. You look like you're about to fall over, he said. I'm fine. You're not. Come on. He steadied her with a hand at her elbow. Let's get you cleaned up and fed. We have a fitting in 2 hours. A fitting? For tomorrow night. You can't show up to a charity gala in jeans and a t-shirt. His smile was slight. Marie's already picked out several options. You just need to choose which one makes the right statement. The several options turned out to be a dozen evening gowns, each more stunning than the last. Elena stood in the bedroom staring at them, completely overwhelmed. I can't wear any of these, she said. They're too much. They're exactly enough, Marie said from behind her. Tomorrow night, you're not an art restorer. You're Adrian Voss's companion, walking into hostile territory with your head held high. You need to look the part. I don't even know what the part is. Strong, confident, untouchable. Marie pulled out a dress in deep emerald green, the fabric shimmering in the light. Try this one. 20 minutes later, Elena stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized her reflection. The dress was stunning, off the shoulder, fitted through the bodice, flowing into a skirt that moved like water. It made her look elegant, powerful, dangerous. Perfect, Marie said with satisfaction. Now, let's talk about hair and makeup. By the time Marie was finished, Elena looked like someone else entirely. Someone who belonged in Adrian's world. Someone who could walk into a room full of criminals and hold her own. There was a knock at the door. Adrian stepped in, then stopped, his expression shifting into something Elena couldn't quite read. Well? She asked, suddenly nervous. Is it too much? It's perfect. His voice was rough. You're perfect. Marie smiled and slipped out, leaving them alone. Adrian moved closer, his eyes tracking over the dress, her hair, her face. Tomorrow night is going to be dangerous, he said quietly. You understand that, right? Once we walk through those doors, there's no backing out. I understand. Volkov will try to separate us, try to get you alone. You can't let that happen. I won't. And if something goes wrong, if you hear gunfire, if you see people running, if anything feels off, you find Thomas or one of our people and you let them get you out. You don't try to help. You don't try to be brave. You survive. That's the only thing that matters. Elena reached up and placed her palm against his jaw, feeling the tension there. I promise. But you need to promise me something too. What? That you'll be careful, that you won't do something reckless trying to protect me. She held his gaze. I need you to survive this too. Something flickered across Adrian's face, surprise maybe, or tenderness. He covered her hand with his, turning his head slightly to press a kiss to her palm. I'll do my best, he said softly. That's all I'm asking. They stood there for a moment, the space between them charged with everything they hadn't said. Then Adrian stepped back, the professional mask sliding into place. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long night. But Elena couldn't rest. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through everything that could go wrong. Around midnight, she gave up and wandered into the main living area. Her father was still awake, sitting in the dark near the windows with a glass of what was probably whiskey. Can't sleep either? He asked when he saw her. No? Elena sat down in the chair across from him, maintaining distance. Are you scared? Terrified, but that's nothing new. Richard took a drink. I've been scared most of my life, Elena. Scared of losing, scared of winning, scared of what comes next. Fear's like an old friend at this point. That's a terrible way to live. I know, but it's the only way I know how. He looked at her, his battered face sad in the dim light. You're not like me. You're braver than I ever was. I'm not brave. I'm just tired of running. Same thing, sometimes. Richard set down his glass. I know I don't have the right to say this. I know I lost that right years ago when I chose cards and dice over being your father. But I'm proud of you. Of who you became despite me. Elena felt her throat tighten. Don't. I have to. Because tomorrow night, when we walk into that gala, there's a very real chance we don't walk out. And I need you to know, his voice cracked, I need you to know that you deserve better than me. Better than my mistakes and my debts and my cowardice. I know I deserve better. The words came out sharper than Elena intended, but she didn't soften them. I spent my whole childhood knowing it. Every time we moved in the middle of the night, every time you chose gambling over groceries, every time you promised you'd change and didn't. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything. It never has. Elena stood up. But tomorrow night, you have a chance to do something right. To help instead of hurt, to be useful instead of just another problem to solve. So don't waste it. She walked back to her room before he could respond, her heart pounding and her eyes burning with unshed tears. She'd spent so many years building walls between herself and her father, and now those walls were crumbling whether she wanted them to or not. The next day passed in a blur of final preparations. Thomas walked her through the security plan 3 times. Nina briefed her on Volkov's known associates. Detective Chen showed her photos of the bounty hunters who might be at the gala. If you see any of these faces, you alert someone immediately, he said. Don't engage, don't try to handle it yourself. I understand. I hope so. Because these people don't play by rules. They'll smile at you while planning how to collect their payday. By the time evening arrived, Elena's nerves were stretched so thin she felt like she might shatter. Marie helped her into the emerald dress, styled her hair into an elegant updo, and applied makeup that made her eyes look huge and her features sharp. You look like a queen going to war, Marie said softly, which I suppose is accurate. There was a knock at the door. Adrian stepped in wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than Elena's old car, and for a moment they just stared at each other. Ready? He asked. No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's my girl. He offered his arm. Let's go make Marcus Volkov regret ever knowing your name. The drive to the gala venue took 20 minutes, during which Elena focused on breathing and not throwing up from nerves. Thomas drove, with 2 more security vehicles flanking them. The whole convoy moved through the city like a well-oiled machine. Remember the plan, Adrian said quietly. We arrive. We make our presence known. We circulate for exactly 90 minutes, then we leave. You stay within arm's reach of me at all times. What about my father? He arrives separately with Nina. They'll maintain distance but stay visible. Adrian's hand found hers in the darkness of the car. If you want to back out, now's the time. Say the word and we turn around. Elena looked at their joined hands, at the man who'd become so important so quickly, and shook her head. No backing out. We finished this. Then let's finish it. The venue was spectacular. A historic hotel ballroom with crystal chandeliers and marble floors, filled with 500 of the city's wealthiest and most dangerous people. They entered through the main doors, and Elena felt every eye in the room turn to watch. Adrian's hand settled at the small of her back, warm and steady. Head up, shoulders back. You belong here. They descended the grand staircase together, and Elena felt the weight of all those stairs. But she kept her head high, her expression calm, her steps measured. By the time they reached the ballroom floor, she almost believed she belonged in this glittering, dangerous world. Mr. Voss, a waiter appeared with champagne. Welcome. Adrian took 2 glasses and handed one to Elena. To making statements, he said quietly. She touched her glass to his. To not backing down. They'd barely taken a sip when a voice cut through the ambient noise like a knife. Adrian Voss, what an unexpected pleasure. Elena turned to find Marcus Volkov standing 3 feet away, smiling like a shark who'd just spotted blood in the water. Marcus Volkov was not what Elena had expected. Somehow she'd imagined someone physically imposing, scarred, menacing, the kind of man whose appearance alone announced danger. Instead, Volkov looked like a successful banker in his late 50s, with silver-streaked hair, an expensive suit, and a smile that never quite reached his cold blue eyes. Marcus. Adrian's voice was perfectly controlled, betraying nothing. I wasn't aware you'd taken an interest in charity work. I've always supported worthy causes. Education, the arts, protecting the vulnerable. Volkov's gaze slid to Elena, assessing and calculating. And you must be Miss Hart. I've heard so much about you. Elena felt Adrian's hand tighten slightly at her back. A warning or a reassurance, she couldn't tell which. She forced herself to meet Volkov's eyes directly. Nothing good, I'm sure, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Volkov's smile widened. On the contrary, I hear you're quite brave. Knocking on doors at 3 in the morning, refusing money, standing up to men who could crush you without a second thought. He took a sip of his champagne. That takes either courage or stupidity. I haven't decided which yet. Does it matter? Elena asked. Oh, very much. Courage can be useful. Stupidity just gets people killed. His eyes flicked to Adrian. I trust you received my message about the contract. I did. And I'm here to deliver one of my own. Adrian's voice was silk over steel. Touch her. Touch her father. Or send any more of your freelance thugs after either of them, and I'll burn everything you've built in Atlantic City to the ground. The temperature in the immediate area seemed to drop several degrees. Around them, conversations continued, music played, people laughed and drank without any idea that 2 of the most dangerous men in the city were seconds away from violence. Volkov's smile never wavered. Strong words for a man who's standing in my territory, surrounded by my people. Which is exactly why I'm saying them here. So there's no confusion about where we stand. Adrian shifted slightly, positioning himself between Elena and Volkov with subtle precision. The debt is paid. The contract is void. Leave them alone, and we'll pretend this unpleasantness never happened. And if I don't agree to those terms, then we find out whether your security can stop me from putting a bullet in your head before they put 3 in mine. Mutual destruction. Very dramatic, terrible for business. Adrian's expression was absolutely calm. Or you can be smart, take the win you've already got, and walk away. Volkov studied him for a long moment. Then he turned to Elena, his expression thoughtful. Tell me, Miss Hart, what is it about Adrian that makes a woman like you willing to stand in this room, knowing you're a target? Is it the money? The power? Or do you actually believe he can protect you from people like me? Elena felt every instinct screaming at her to look away, to defer to Adrian, to let him handle this. Instead, she thought about bunny slippers and dropped money and the moment she'd decided to stop being invisible. I don't need him to protect me from you, she said quietly. I just need him to teach me how to protect myself. There's a difference. Something flickered across Volkov's face. Surprise, perhaps, or grudging respect. Interesting. Most people in your position would be begging for their lives right now. I'm not most people. No, I'm beginning to see that. Volkov glanced at Adrian. You've chosen well. She's got spine. That's rare. We're done here, Adrian said flatly. Enjoy your party, Marcus. Stay away from what's mine. He guided Elena away before Volkov could respond, his hand firm at her back. They moved through the crowd, and Elena could feel dozens of eyes tracking their progress. That was either very brave or very stupid, Adrian murmured in her ear. Everyone keeps saying that, because it keeps being true. But there was something almost like pride in his voice. You handled him perfectly, better than I expected. I was terrified. I know, but you didn't show it. That's what matters. Adrian steered them toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. Thomas is positioned near the west exit. Nina has eyes on your father near the bar. We stay visible for another hour, then we leave. But the hour never came. 30 minutes later, Elena was making polite conversation with a gallery owner who'd apparently been at one of the museum's fundraisers when she caught movement in her peripheral vision. A man in server's uniform was moving through the crowd with purpose, his eyes locked on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. She recognized his face from the photos Detective Chen had shown her, one of the bounty hunters. Adrian, she said quietly, interrupting whatever he'd been saying to the gallery owner. 3 o'clock. White jacket. Adrian's expression didn't change, but she felt him tense. Thomas, he said into what must have been a hidden microphone. West side. Server uniform. Intercept. Everything happened very fast after that. The bounty hunter changed direction suddenly, heading not for Elena but toward the bar where her father stood with Nina. Elena saw her father's face go pale with recognition, saw Nina reach for something under her jacket, saw Thomas appear from nowhere, moving to intercept. Then the lights went out. The ballroom plunged into darkness, and for a moment there was shocked silence. Then someone screamed, glass shattered. The crowd began to panic, pushing and shoving toward the exits. Stay with me, Adrian commanded, his arm like iron around Elena's waist. Don't let go. But in the chaos and darkness, someone slammed into them hard from the side. Elena felt Adrian's grip break, felt hands grabbing at her arms, her dress, felt herself being dragged away from where Adrian's voice was shouting her name. Training kicked in before thought could. Elena dropped her weight like Thomas had taught her, making herself harder to move, drove her elbow back hard into someone's ribs, heard a grunt of pain and twisted away, using the panic of the crowd to shield her movement. Elena! Her father's voice, somewhere to her left. She pushed toward the sound, her heart hammering. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in eerie red shadows. Through the chaos, she could see her father struggling with 2 men near the bar. Nina was down, blood on her temple. And Thomas was fighting 3 men at once near the west exit, moving with brutal efficiency. Elena didn't think. She grabbed a champagne bottle from an abandoned table and ran toward her father. One of the men holding him turned at her approach, his expression surprised. Elena swung the bottle with everything she had. It connected with his shoulder. She'd been aiming for his head, but he'd moved, and shattered. The man swore and released her father, who stumbled backward into Elena. Get out, she gasped. The east exit. Not without you. Richard grabbed her hand. Come on. They ran together through the panicking crowd, dodging waiters and overturned tables. Behind them, Elena could hear gunfire, sharp cracks that sent fresh waves of terror through the ballroom. She didn't look back. Couldn't afford to. They burst through a service door into a narrow hallway. Elena's heels were impossible to run in, so she kicked them off and kept going barefoot. Her father was breathing hard, his injuries from Volkov's beating slowing him down. Which way? She demanded. Left, then right. There's a loading dock. More gunfire. Closer now. Elena pulled her father faster, her mind racing. They needed to find Adrian's people. Needed to get somewhere defensible. A man stepped out of a side corridor, blocking their path. Elena recognized him immediately. Another bounty hunter from Chen's photos, bigger than the first one, with cold eyes and a gun already raised. Miss Hart, he said calmly. Mr. Hart, please don't make this difficult. Elena's mind went blank with terror. She had no weapon, no backup, no way to fight someone with a gun. Behind them, she could hear footsteps getting closer, more of them, converging. Her father stepped in front of her, his hands raised. Take me. Let her go. I'm the one Volkov really wants. He wants you both. Alive and intact brings full payment. Dead or damaged brings half. The bounty hunter's expression didn't change. So we can do this easy or hard. Your choice. Hard, said a voice from behind the bounty hunter. Definitely hard. Adrian appeared from the shadows like something from a nightmare, his tuxedo torn and blood-stained, a gun in his hand. He didn't hesitate, didn't negotiate. Just fired twice, center mass, and the bounty hunter dropped. Elena's father made a strangled sound. Elena just stood frozen, staring at the body, at Adrian standing over it like death incarnate. Are you hurt? Adrian demanded, already moving toward them. Elena shook her head mutely. Good. We need to move. Now. He grabbed her hand, pulling her over the body and down the corridor. Thomas has secured the loading dock. We have maybe 90 seconds before Volkov's people lock down all the exits. They ran. Elena's feet were bleeding from running barefoot on concrete, but she barely felt it. Adrenaline and terror had turned everything sharp and immediate. Behind them, she could hear shouts. More gunfire. The loading dock appeared ahead, where Thomas stood guard with two other men Elena recognized from the security briefing. A black SUV idled nearby, its engine running. Get in, Thomas ordered. We're blown. Half of Volkov's security is coming down on this position. Adrian practically threw Elena into the SUV, then her father. He climbed in after them as Thomas slammed the door and the vehicle accelerated hard enough to throw them against the seats. Nina? Adrian demanded. Conscious, concussed, James got her out through the kitchen. Thomas was driving like a maniac, weaving through narrow service streets. Chen says Volkov is claiming we started the attack, that we shot first. Of course he is. Adrian's jaw was tight. How many casualties? Unknown. At least 4 dead that we know of. Dozen more injured. Thomas took a corner so fast the SUV's tires screamed. This is bad, Adrian. This is war. It's been war since he put a contract on them. Adrian pulled out his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. Get us to the safe house on Riverside. I need to make some calls. Ma. Elena sat pressed against her father in the back seat, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She could smell gunpowder and blood, could feel the adrenaline starting to fade, leaving her hollow and sick. You saved my life, her father said quietly. When that man had the gun, you hit him with a bottle. I missed. I was aiming for his head. You still saved me. His voice cracked. After everything I've done, everything I've cost you, you saved me. Elena didn't know what to say to that. Didn't have words for the complicated tangle of fear and anger and exhausted love in her chest. So she just leaned her head against the cold window and watched the city blur past. The safe house was a nondescript apartment building in a neighborhood that had seen better days. Thomas pulled into an underground parking garage, and they climbed 4 flights of stairs to a unit that looked like it had been furnished from a discount store catalog. It's not the penthouse, Adrian said, locking 3 separate deadbolts behind them. But it's secure. No one knows about this location except my inner circle. Elena collapsed onto a worn couch, her whole body starting to crash from the adrenaline. Her feet were still bleeding, leaving smears on the cheap carpet. Her dress was ruined, torn at the hem where someone had grabbed it. Her hair had come completely undone. Adrian knelt in front of her, his face tight with concern. Let me see your feet. They're fine. They're bleeding. Let me see them. His voice had shifted from commanding to gentle, and somehow that made Elena's eyes burn with unshed tears. He cleaned and bandaged her feet with surprising tenderness, his hands steady despite the violence they'd just escaped. Elena watched him work and tried to process what had just happened. The gunfire, the bodies, the terror of being separated in the darkness, the fact that she'd fought back instead of just freezing. I hit someone with a bottle, she said suddenly. Adrian looked up. I know, Thomas saw. I've never hit anyone before in my life, and tonight I hit someone with a champagne bottle and didn't even hesitate. You were protecting your father. Instinct took over. Adrian finished with her feet and sat back on his heels. You did good, Elena. Better than good. People died tonight. Yes, they did. His expression was grim. And more will die before this is over. Volkov crossed a line tonight. He attacked us in public, in front of witnesses. He's declared open war. So what happens now? Before Adrian could answer, his phone rang. He answered it immediately. Talk to me. When? How many? All right, lock it down. No one in or out without my approval. He hung up and looked at Thomas, who'd been standing guard by the door. Volkov's claiming we brought guns to the gala intending to assassinate him. He's got witnesses willing to testify, security footage edited to support his story. The police are issuing warrants for my arrest by morning. That's insane, Elena said. There were 500 people there. They saw exactly what Volkov wanted them to see. Chaos, gunfire, bodies. Adrian's voice was hard. And now he's painting himself as the victim and me as the aggressor. It's smart. Turns public opinion against us and gives him legal cover for whatever he does next. So we're trapped here. For now. Adrian stood up, pacing the small room. But being trapped doesn't mean being helpless. Chen is working his contacts in the department. Nina's reaching out to our allies, and I've got calls into everyone who owes me favors. And me? Elena asked. What do I do? Adrian stopped pacing and looked at her. Really looked at her, his expression shifting into something she couldn't quite read. You've already done more than I had any right to ask. You walked into danger with your head held high. You fought when you needed to fight. You saved your father's life. He moved closer, his voice dropping. What happens next is my burden to carry, not yours. That's not how this works anymore. Elena stood up despite her bandaged feet, facing him directly. You said I was part of this, that I'd proven myself, so don't try to protect me by shutting me out now. Elena, no. You don't get to decide this alone. She was shaking again, but not from fear this time. From fury. From exhaustion. From the overwhelming realization that she'd crossed a threshold tonight she could never uncross. I'm in this with you, all the way. So tell me, what's the plan? Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. You're incredible, you know that? I'm terrified and covered in blood and I just watch people die. I don't feel incredible. That's what makes you incredible. You're terrified and you're still standing here demanding to help. He cupped her face in both hands. The plan is simple. We find proof that Volkov orchestrated tonight's attack. We expose him before he can use the legal system against us. And we end this war before it destroys everything we've built. How do we find proof? We already have it. Adrian's smile turned sharp. Your father's been recording his conversations with Volkov's people for months. Insurance, in case they ever tried to kill him. He just doesn't know we know about it. Everyone turned to look at Richard, who'd been sitting silently in the corner. His face went pale. How did you think I'd bring you into my operation without vetting every detail of your life? Adrian's voice was a matter of fact. I know about the recordings. I know where you keep them. And I know they contain evidence of Volkov ordering hits, laundering money, and running illegal operations across 3 states. Richard's hands were shaking. If I give those to you, Volkov will kill me. Volkov's going to try to kill you anyway. At least this way you die useful. Adrian's expression was pitiless. Where are the recordings, Richard? Safety deposit box, First National Bank, downtown branch, box 447. Richard's voice was barely a whisper. The key's in my apartment, taped under the bathroom sink. Thomas was already on his phone. I'll send someone to get it. No. Elena surprised herself by speaking. I'll get it. Everyone stared at her. That's insane, Adrian said immediately. Your face is all over the news by now. The moment you step outside, the moment any of your people step outside, Volkov's watching for them. But me? I'm supposed to be hiding, scared. No one will expect me to go on the offensive. Elena looked at Thomas. You said I needed to learn how to disappear, how to be invisible. Teach me, right now, and then let me do this. Absolutely not, Adrian said flatly. It's too dangerous. Everything is too dangerous. But sitting here waiting for Volkov to find us is more dangerous than going after the evidence ourselves. Elena held his gaze. You know I'm right. Adrian's jaw was so tight she could see the muscle jumping. If something happens to you, then make sure nothing happens to me. Send Thomas with me. Plan every detail. Use the training you've been drilling into me. Elena stepped closer to him. But don't make me sit here doing nothing while you risk everything, please. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Finally, Adrian closed his eyes and nodded. Fine. But Thomas goes with you, and you follow his instructions exactly. No improvising. Deal. 2 hours later, Elena stood outside her father's apartment building wearing clothes that Thomas had somehow procured: jeans, a dark hoodie, sneakers. Her hair was tucked under a baseball cap, and she wore glasses with clear lenses that somehow changed the shape of her face. You look completely different, Thomas said with approval. Even I barely recognize you. Will it be enough? It'll have to be. Come on. We've got maybe a 10-minute window before Volkov's people make their next patrol sweep. They moved quickly through the building's back entrance, taking stairs instead of the elevator. Elena's heart was pounding so hard she felt dizzy, but she kept moving. Her father's apartment was on the 3rd floor, and Thomas had a key that Chen had provided. The apartment was small and messy, with empty bottles and racing forms scattered across every surface. It smelled like cigarettes and regret. Elena tried not to think about her father living here, alone with his mistakes. Bathroom, Thomas said quietly. Hurry. Elena found the key exactly where her father had said, taped under the sink behind cleaning supplies that looked like they'd never been used. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it twice. Got it, she whispered. Good. Let's... The apartment door crashed open. 3 men poured in, moving with military precision. Elena recognized one of them from the gala, one of Volkov's security team. His eyes widened when he saw her. Hello, Miss Hart. You just made this very easy. Thomas was already moving, his gun coming up. Get behind me. Now! Elena scrambled behind him as gunfire erupted in the tiny apartment. The sound was deafening in the confined space. She pressed herself against the bathroom wall, the key clutched in her fist, and tried not to scream. Thomas was fighting all 3 of them, his movements precise and brutal. But there were too many of them. Elena saw him take a hit to the shoulder, saw blood bloom across his shirt, saw him go down on one knee. The nearest attacker raised his gun toward Thomas's head. Elena didn't think. She grabbed the heavy porcelain toilet tank lid and swung it with everything she had. It connected with the man's head with a sickening crack. He dropped like a stone. His gun skittered across the floor, and Elena dove for it, her hands closing around cold metal. She'd never held a real gun before. Thomas had shown her how they worked, had her practice with a plastic training model, but this was different. This was heavy and real and terrifying. One of the remaining men turned toward her. Don't be stupid, sweetheart. Put it down. Elena raised the gun with shaking hands, remembering what Thomas had taught her. Get away from him. You won't shoot. You're not a killer. I hit your friend with a toilet lid. You want to bet what else I'll do? The man hesitated. That moment of indecision was all Thomas needed. He surged up from the floor, taking the man down with brutal efficiency. The 3rd attacker ran, smart enough to know when he was outnumbered. Thomas leaned against the wall, breathing hard, blood soaking his shoulder. You hit him with a toilet lid. It was heavy. Good thinking. He looked at the gun in her hands. You can put that down now. Elena's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold it anymore. She set it carefully on the floor and backed away, her whole body trembling. We need to go, Thomas said. Now, before more of them come. They made it back to the safe house 40 minutes later, Elena supporting Thomas's good side while he kept pressure on his shoulder wound. Adrian met them at the door, his face going white when he saw the blood. What happened? Ambush at the apartment. 3 of Volkov's people. Thomas grimaced. Elena saved my life with a toilet lid. A what? Long story. Elena held up the key. But we got it. Adrian stared at her, at the blood on her clothes that wasn't hers, at the wild look in her eyes, at the key clutched in her trembling hand. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Never again, he said into her hair. Never again, Elena. I can't. I'm okay. I'm alive. We got the key. She pulled back enough to look at his face. Now, let's finish this. The next 6 hours were a blur of activity. Marie patched up Thomas's shoulder while Detective Chen arrived with a key to access the safety deposit box. Adrian made call after call, assembling allies and applying pressure in places Elena didn't fully understand. When they finally opened the box at dawn, with Chen providing cover at the bank, They found exactly what they needed: dozens of recordings meticulously cataloged, documenting every illegal activity Volkov had been involved in for the past 18 months. "This is enough to put him away for life," Chen said, listening to one recording where Volkov casually ordered someone's execution. "Hell, this is enough to bring down half his organization." "Then let's bring it down," Adrian said. By noon, the recordings were in the hands of the FBI, the State Attorney General, and 3 separate media outlets. By evening, Volkov was in custody, his assets frozen, his empire crumbling as associates scrambled to cut deals. The warrants for Adrian's arrest were dropped. The narrative shifted from violent crime boss to man defending himself against corrupt rival. And through it all, Elena sat in the safe house with her father, watching the news coverage and trying to process the fact that it was finally over. "You did it," Richard said quietly. "You actually did it. We did it. Your recordings gave us the evidence we needed." Elena looked at him. "What you did, keeping those recordings, even though you were terrified, that took courage." "I was just covering my own ass. Maybe. But it saved a lot of lives today, including yours." She paused. "What will you do now?" Richard was quiet for a long moment. "I was thinking maybe I'd get clean. Actually clean, not just saying it this time. There's a facility upstate that Chen mentioned, 30-day program. If I survive it, maybe I can start actually being someone you don't have to be ashamed of." Elena felt tears sting her eyes. "I'm not ashamed of you, I'm just tired. Tired of the chaos and the fear and the constant crisis. I know, and I'm sorry for all of it." He reached out hesitantly, and after a moment, Elena took his hand. "Thank you for not letting them kill me, even though I probably deserved it." "Nobody deserves that." She squeezed his hand once, then let go. "Get help, Dad. Real help. And maybe when you're actually better, we can try to figure out what a relationship between us looks like." "I'd like that." His voice was thick with emotion. "I'd really like that." 3 days later, Elena stood in the penthouse watching the sunrise paint the city gold and pink. Volkov was awaiting trial. Her father was in rehab. Thomas was recovering well. Nina had returned to work with a spectacular black eye and a story about fighting 4 men at once that got more dramatic with each retelling. And Adrian, "You're up early," his voice came from behind her. Elena turned to find him in the doorway, hair mussed from sleep, wearing only pajama pants. She'd gotten used to the sight over the past few days, the way he looked without the armor of expensive suits and careful control. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Too much quiet." "I know what you mean." He moved to stand beside her at the windows. "Chen called. The FBI wants to interview you about what happened at the gala." "When?" "Whenever you're ready. There's no rush." Adrian's hand found hers. "They're more interested in building their case against Volkov than pressing charges against anyone who defended themselves." Elena nodded, lacing her fingers through his. "What happens now? With us?" It was the question that had been hovering between them for days. The danger that had brought them together was gone. The crisis that had made every moment urgent had passed. Now there was just them. Whatever that meant. "That depends," Adrian said carefully. "What do you want to happen?" "I don't know." Elena turned to face him fully. 2 weeks ago, I was invisible. I went to work, came home, talked to no one, wanted nothing except to be left alone. And now I've fought bounty hunters, survived a war, saved lives, and fallen for the most dangerous man in the city. I don't even recognize myself anymore. Is that a bad thing? I don't think so. Terrifying, but not bad. She reached up to touch his face, feeling the rough stubble along his jaw. You changed everything. You made me visible, made me strong, made me believe I could be more than the scared girl hiding in bunny slippers. You were always more than that. I just helped you see it. Adrian pulled her closer. But you need to understand, my world is still dangerous. Volkov's gone, but there will be others. There will always be risks. I know. And if you stay with me, you'll never be truly invisible again. You'll always be a target to anyone who wants to hurt me. I know that too. Elena stood on her toes, bringing them almost level. But being invisible didn't keep me safe, it just kept me alone. And I'm tired of being alone. Adrian's eyes searched hers. Are you sure? Because once we do this, really do this, there's no going back to your old life. I don't want my old life. I want this one. The messy, dangerous, complicated one where I matter, and I'm seen and I'm strong enough to stand beside you. She kissed him softly. I want you. The kiss deepened, becoming something hungry and desperate and full of everything they'd been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said quietly. I didn't plan to. Didn't want to. But that night when you stood at my door in those ridiculous slippers and refused my money, you got under my skin. And I haven't been able to get you out since. Elena felt her heart expand in her chest, full and aching and perfect. I love you too. Even though you're terrifying and dangerous and you've turned my entire life upside down. I love you. So what do we do about it? We start over. Not as protector and protected. Not as crime boss and liability. Just as two people who found each other in the strangest possible way and decided they wanted to keep finding each other. She smiled. And maybe you can teach me to run your legitimate businesses. I'm good with details and restoration. I bet I could be good with investments and property management too. You want to work for me? I want to work with you. Be your partner in the legal parts of your empire. Help you build something that doesn't require bodyguards and bulletproof cars. She paused. Unless you'd rather I go back to the museum, no. Adrian's arms tightened around her. No, I want you here. Want you with me. Want to build something legitimate that we can both be proud of. His smile was soft. Though I'm keeping the bodyguards, some habits are hard to break. I can live with that. They stood there as the sun rose higher, painting the city in shades of gold. Below them, people were waking up, starting their days, living their invisible lives. And up here, 20 stories above it all, Elena Hart, once so determined to disappear, stood in the arms of the man who'd made her visible and knew she was exactly where she belonged. 6 months later, Elena stood in front of a mirror in a room that had once been her prison and was now her home. The emerald dress from the gala had been replaced by something simpler, a cream-colored dress that Marie had helped her choose, elegant without being ostentatious. You look beautiful, Marie said, adjusting the final pin in Elena's hair. Are you nervous? Terrified, but in a good way. Elena touched the simple gold necklace at her throat, a gift from Adrian last month. Is everyone here? Everyone. Thomas is complaining about his tie. Nina's already making jokes about how she should have been the maid of honor. Your father's sitting in the front row looking like he might cry. Marie smiled. And Adrian's been pacing for the last hour like a caged animal. Elena laughed. Some things never change. Some things do, though. You did. Marie squeezed her shoulder. The woman I met 6 months ago wouldn't have believed she could be here right now. You're right, she wouldn't have. Elena took a deep breath. But I'm not her anymore. The ceremony was small. Just Adrian's inner circle, Detective Chen, who'd become an unlikely friend, and Elena's father, 3 months sober and looking healthier than she'd seen him in years. No elaborate decorations, no hundreds of guests, just the people who mattered, gathered in the penthouse where everything had changed. Adrian waited for her near the windows overlooking the city, wearing a simple dark suit and an expression of such open emotion that Elena felt her breath catch. When their eyes met, he smiled, that real smile that transformed his face and reminded her why she'd fallen for him in the first place. She walked to him without hesitation, without fear, without any of the careful invisibility she'd once wrapped around herself like armor. Hi, she said when she reached him. Hi. He took her hands. You're beautiful. You're biased. Completely, but also right. He pulled her closer, speaking quietly enough that only she could hear. You know you don't have to do this. We don't need a ceremony to make us official. I know, but I want to. I want to stand here in front of people who matter and choose you, publicly, permanently, no more hiding. Elena smiled. Besides, someone once told me that standing your ground is the only way to survive. So I'm standing my ground, with you. The ceremony was brief. A judge that Chen had recommended, simple vows they'd written themselves, promises to choose each other every day, even when it was hard. When Adrian kissed her, sealing those promises, Elena felt something inside her finally settle into place. She was seen, she was strong, she was loved, and she was home. The reception afterward was casual, food from Elena's favorite Italian restaurant, music from a playlist Nina had put together, laughter and stories shared among people who'd become family through fire and blood and impossible choices. Elena's father approached her as the evening wound down, his eyes bright with tears he didn't try to hide. "I'm proud of you, baby girl," he said quietly. "Not just for today, for everything. For being braver than I ever was. For giving me a chance to be better. For not giving up on me even when I'd given up on myself." "You're doing the work," Elena said. "That's what matters." "Yeah, but I wouldn't be doing it if you hadn't shown me what strength actually looks like." He hugged her carefully, like he was afraid she might break. "Be happy, Elena. You deserve it more than anyone I know." As the night deepened and guests gradually left, Elena found herself back at the windows with Adrian, his arms around her waist, her back against his chest. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That 2 weeks ago, or was it 6 months, I stood in my apartment at 3 a.m. in bunny slippers, tired and angry and desperate enough to do something crazy." She leaned back against him. "If someone had told me then that I'd end up here, I never would have believed them. You did something braver than you knew, knocked on the door of the most dangerous man in the city and refused to back down." Adrian's lips brushed her temple. "And changed both our lives forever." "No regrets?" "None." "You?" Elena thought about her quiet, invisible life. Thought about the woman she'd been, small and scared and so desperately alone. Thought about the woman she'd become, strong and visible and loved beyond measure. "Not even one," she said. Below them, the city glittered with a million lights, each one representing someone living their invisible life, making their careful choices, trying to survive in a world that could be beautiful and brutal in equal measure. And up here, 20 stories above it all, the shy art restorer who'd once trembled at a dangerous man's door stood in her husband's arms and knew that the quietest voice had indeed changed the most dangerous heart. The war was over. The danger had passed. And what remained was simple and profound and absolutely real. Two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen, every single day, to step into the light together. Elena had spent years learning how to disappear. But in the end, being visible, being seen, being known, being loved, was the greatest strength of all.